Hi, my name is Michelle Ladisser, and I'll be talking about addiction and health from a Buddhist perspective. What is addiction? Buddhists view addiction as a disease of the mind. This is contrary to how Western medicine usually views addiction, which is looked at as a biological disease. Buddhism views human psychology as being mostly driven by two innate impulses. One is desire or attraction, also seen as the craving impulse, and two is the repulsion or aversion, also seen as the impulse of hatred. Addiction focuses on the desire or craving impulse. Addiction is seen as an overactive desire sense that has gone way beyond normal limits and which is harmful to self. Buddhists refer to addiction as a false refuge. This is also motivated by the desire or craving impulse and only relieves one temporarily from suffering by excessive drug use or other addictive behaviors. Buddhism has an ancient myth that there is a hell realm populated by beings whose appetites exceed their capacity for satisfaction. Their stomachs are huge, but their throats are tiny. No matter how much they try to eat, their hunger remains. In ancient India, these beings were referred to as hungry ghosts. Today we refer to them as alcoholics and drug addicts. A central Buddhist tenet is excess pleasure is painful. So what are treatments for addicts or hungry ghosts? The standard modern-day Western medicine focuses on abstention. This is completely removing the substance or behavior immediately and all at once. Buddhism views this approach as harsh and extremely uncompassionate. They believe it fails to address the central element of personal responsibility for the state a person is in. The Buddhist approach is somewhat different. They encourage moderation, abstention, and self-control. This is a learning process and not viewed as a punishment as some standard treatments can be. Buddhists focus on a personal responsibility of the state they're in and not blaming the addiction on anyone or anything. This approach encourages a sense of self-identity and not based upon desires but upon self-fulfillment and self-respect. Once self-respect can be accomplished, one does not seek to harm themselves. Again, Buddhists seek to teach that one is entirely responsible for their own actions. They help the person to see and understand that there is nothing special or different about the state they are in, and that life as is good. They help to restore a sense of self-worth, and gradually lead them away from what they crave. Teaches life that can be sweet and fulfilling without their addiction. There are 4 noble truths of Buddhism. Number 1 is life means suffering. To live means to suffer because the human nature is not perfect and neither is the world we live in. During our lifetime, we inevitably have to endure physical suffering such as pain, sickness, injury, and death. We also endure psychological suffering such as sadness, fear, frustration, disappointment, and depression. The origin of suffering is attachment to transient things and the ignorance thereof. Transient things do not only include the physical objects that surround us, but also ideas, and in a greater sense, all objects of our perception. Because the objects of our attachment are transient, their loss is inevitable, thus suffering will necessarily follow. The cessation of suffering is attainable. The third noble truth expresses the idea that suffering can be ended by attaining dispassion. This is attained through nirodha, which is the unmaking of sensual craving. Nirodha extinguishes all forms of clinging and attachment. The path to the cessation of suffering. There is the path to the end of suffering, a gradual path of self-improvement using the Eightfold Path, which is later described. Craving, ignorance, delusions, and its effects will disappear gradually as progress is made on the path. So these are a few methods that the Buddhists use to treat addiction. One, which is probably the biggest one, is mindful meditation. The practice of meditation is an antidote to addiction because it enhances mindfulness or awareness of the behavior. With attention control, the goal is not to change the content of the thoughts, but to develop a different attitude or relationship to thoughts and feeling as they occur in the mind. Harm reduction prevention programs. These do not enforce complete abstinence, but coping skills are taught for when a relapse occurs and how to balance and recover instead of going deeper into relapse. Doctrine of impermanence. Addiction can be defined as an inability to accept impermanence. At one level, addicts seek a permanent high and are fixated on the future, such as when will I get my next high. Practice of mindful meditation also helps clients to accept the basic impermanence of all human experiences. The meditator comes to realize that thoughts, feelings, and images are constantly changing. Clients who gain this knowledge of impermanence are often liberated from their psychological dependency on the addictive behavior. Lastly, compassion and the Eightfold Path. Progress along the path involves the development of a new set of attitudes or beliefs, as well as engaging in behaviors that heighten awareness and balance. And these the 8 parts are right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is just a little video describing the Four Noble Truths a little better.
Or a philosophy? It is possible to say that Buddhism is either or both, but the debate misses the most important way to define Buddhism. Buddhism is medicine. First and foremost, whether it is a religion or a philosophy, Buddhism is medicine for the mind. It recognizes suffering in the world and prescribes a way to heal this suffering. The Four Noble Truths are the basis of Buddhism as medicine. 1. Life involves suffering. There is war, sickness, old age, and death. Happiness based on anything in the world does not last. Everything is impermanent and ephemeral. 2. The cause of suffering is clinging and desire. We want to hold on to what cannot be held, and we base our happiness on achievement instead of on who and what we really are. 3. There is a way to lessen, heal, and escape suffering. Buddhism is pessimistic about the world, but not about the human mind. We are not helpless. We can heal ourselves. 4. The way to decrease suffering is the Noble Eightfold Path of right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Buddhism is a prescription for psychological and spiritual healing, given by a man called Buddha, the Awakened One. He had awakened to a treatment for human suffering. By practicing Buddhist principles, ethics, and meditation, we can begin to cure the psychological disease which afflicts us all, and improve the quality of our lives.
So, a couple critical thinking questions. Do you think a Buddhist approach would be more effective than the standard Western medicine approach? 2. What could be considered an addiction other than drugs or alcohol? And 3. Do you think addiction is a disease of the mind, a biological disease, or both? And thank you for listening.